Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm introducing a video series, video 1, video 2, about DAOs, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. In video 1, I'm going to go over the purpose of the videos and why I'm going into depth on DAOs. And then I will go into the history of DAOs. And some of the topics that I'll be covering in this video are why understanding DAOs is important, the general overviews of what a DAO is, and DAOs compared to the old system, and then some of the history. In the next video, I will go over more in depth on how they work, the issues with them. Some of the topics will be entropy, centralized versus decentralized, quality of power, and incentives of system structure. And then finally, DAO model, which is how can we spot a DAO that is likely to be profitable versus unprofitable, performant versus unperformant. So that is what these videos are really about, is basically DAOs. I've seen a lot of DAOs on the rise, and more of them are emerging, and this is the way humans will orchestrate their interrelationships in the future. So why is it important for me to even discuss this topic? Well, for one, from the top down, DAOs are a way for humans to work with each other. And if you think of this grid, like you see this plane, this is a plane, right? And then there's outcomes on, like a landscape of outcomes on this grid. And basically, the policy landscape is what I will call this, and the outcome, the state of being, could be negative or positive, abstractly speaking. And so along the policy landscape, you're going to get different emergent results. Like North Korea would be the worst, and governments that go through code, like programming, that would probably be really good outcomes. And free markets would be, good outcomes. So depending on the policies that the DAO sets, establishes an outcome on this landscape. And so it's important for us to know what this landscape looks like and to, try to assess it in the best of our abilities so that when we look at DAOs, we can say this one will be profitable or this one will not be profitable. So the landscape changes through time due to technology. So this isn't a static picture. The landscape can change, like the policies and the way the policies should be need to change as well, because this landscape can change through time due to technology and also due to entropy, the accumulation of damage within the just the accumulation of damage within the organization. We see through history, governments come and they make, there's this cycle of strong men make, or the saying is, hard times produce strong men, and strong men produce good times, and good times produce weak men, and weak men produce hard times. So that is the cycle that we see for history. And governments are often of that nature as well. And that is accumulation of damage, that accumulation of entropy, simply because all the humans die out that have been a certain way and who are disciplined, etc. And that's a way of entropy accumulating within the system. So these systems have to go through death and rebirth. So even if you're investing in a DAO, you want to know that the DAO could wipe the slate clean. It's capable of self-editing, if it accumulates too much damage. So it could persist through time. So the same logic applies to DAOs to seek, so now that we've looked at this government landscape, we're going to say the same logic applies to DAOs who seek to gain profits for the members. So understanding DAOs is critical for evaluating the future performance probability of these cryptocurrencies that choose to go the DAO route, which is basically going to be all of them inevitably, right? Or, some of them not, right? But it depends on how they're designed. So that will be the profit landscape. And, that will be the objective of the video 2, will to try to design that landscape so we could look at these DAOs and really assess whether a project has a high probability of being profitable. So my objective with these DAO videos is to identify what characteristics to look for to evaluate future returns probability. So what is a DAO? So let's just go into a brief overview of what a DAO even is. So now compared to the old system. So we have this traditional system versus a DAO. So traditional is top-down system, and a DAO is a system, like where a computer code like humans and the relationship of humans with computers and code make these organizations. And these are new. Like these have never existed before you had cryptocurrencies. I mean, in some sense, there's probably been groups that have collaborated, but these can control value, and so that's what makes them operate like businesses or collaborative units. And because there's value within these now that can be shared freely, they're going to explode into existence. So comparatively, the permission of the state is the state top-down sharing, the state, like force, through force. And the way a DAO has permission is it's permissionless. So anyone can come in and join, and anyone can leave. It is freedom. Okay, so these DAOs introduce the concept of collaborative groups where you are free to come and you are free to go. And so that I think that is going to mean they're highly effective for producing the best outcome, because it's about freedom. The assets of traditional system is controlled by the state, which is the banks. And it's basic ledgers that are controlled by a central point. They have to trust the bank. Whereas the blockchain controls the assets of the DAO, which is, cryptocurrency technology. Property rights are enforced by guns and violence using the traditional system. And in DAOs, code and software enforce property rights. And in the old system, lawyers enforce ownership. And once again, code and software in DAOs. And disputes are settled in the courts. And in DAOs, arbitration networks, which are, collaboration bargaining. So the first thing you should notice looking at these two is this is very expensive ongoing cost, very inefficient and very time consuming. This is software so it can keep going through iterations, getting faster and faster and better and better. It is inevitable that DAOs will take over everything. Even if the traditional system was to hunker down and to make all of it illegal, it would take maybe more than a couple lifetimes to clear the state out and get to DAOs, but DAOs are here to stay, and they are going to take over everything because they're just that much more efficient by doing it through code rather than doing it through these old processes, which is kind of like analog versus digital. This is mechanical, this is humans, this is software. So DAOs are going to just take over because they're that much better. So now covering the history of DAOs, and this is my take as well because I am part of the history, or at least I watched it, observed it as an investor because I've been in the space for a while. There are extremely valuable lessons here so that newcomers usually will not understand, but I'm hoping to introduce some of these concepts to people who are new to cryptocurrency, which is anyone after 2017, is new. And these are important things to understand. And I'm noticing even people who have been here are ignoring these principles and ignoring the things that have been learned through time. And there's a reason these things have been learned. But you got to look at the best people, and you got to look at the process, and you got to look at the development of how things fall. So let's start off with the first DAO. Every crypto is a DAO, even Bitcoin. Those who control Bitcoin policy are the miners and the market. So the miners decide the version of Bitcoin they want to support through following the most profitable mining version. Hence, Bcash failure. So Bcash was a split off of Bitcoin, and it was due to, so Bitcoin had these huge inefficiencies. It was very expensive and slow. And so someone came along and they wanted to make Bitcoin cheap. And so it split into two communities. And the one that didn't change the code very much is the one that the market decided to stick with. And the miners stuck with that one because the market decided to give that one more value. If the market would have chosen Bcash, if the market would have chosen to go with this different version and given money to it, then it would have become more profitable to mine, and then it would have gotten more hash rate, and it would have become the more dominant chain. But that's not what happened. So it is a relationship between the market and the miners. So that's the way the DAO version of Bitcoin works. If everyone buys a proof of work system and they start buying it, putting their money into it, and they start, and it gets market traction, it becomes the most profitable to mine with proof of work, that would become the new system, or at least the more dominant system. Hey, Bcash still exists, people can still use it, and it's difficult to attack. The lower it goes, the more easy it is to attack. But it would be, Bitcoin is more secure because it's has more hash behind it. Now, one problem is in the long run, Bitcoin might become less profitable, and that could be damaging to it if something comes along and it's more profitable and it absorbs some of the miners away. It would be in effect taking the security away from Bitcoin. But that's for a different topic. But all Bitcoin cares about, Bitcoin's DAO, and this is one of the major inefficiencies of Bitcoin, is the only thing it cares about is profitable mining. And so one of the things we can say for certain is profitable mining and an efficient, low-cost environment, these are mostly opposing forces, because they only care, if Bitcoin was really efficient, then the cost, the profitability to the miners, the amount of extractable value would be less. And so that is opposing. It opposes efficiency. Proof of work naturally opposes efficiency. And that's one of the reasons we're moving off of proof of work, because it opposes efficiency. So Bitcoin governance is designed to be inefficient, as all proof of work systems are. That's my opinion. You'll find many people who think that proof of work is still great. And, there are some people who propose, like Cardano, that propose that you can scale proof of work, and that's fine and all. But, I personally don't like proof of work, but I still invested in Cardano because that system has such valuable and skilled people behind it. And I often do invest against what I believe because, I have to counter my own self and think that some probability that I could be wrong. But my opinion is proof of work systems will die out. Maybe proof of work systems, they do show that they have some great security. And so maybe Cardano's approach, and even Bitcoin will stick. Actually, when I said die out, I don't think Bitcoin's going to die out. But I don't think it's going to become the biggest, most used system because of its inefficiency. But I think Bitcoin's going to be around forever. I think it's going to keep running forever. It's part of history now. And even myself, if I make a lot of money from other proof of stake systems, I'm still going to buy Bitcoin and treat it as a part of history and even a savings account in some level. So, but that's all. This is all my perspective from this experience. Okay, so, and there's entirely possible that I'm wrong, but that's just the way I see things from researching this stuff. All right, and the next stage in the history of the development of the blockchain space regarding DAOs was the actual formation of the first real DAO in concept. In 2016, the biggest funding event, that's what it was. It was the first major DAO experimental, which raised $150 million in smart contracts for funding VCs on Ethereum, hoping to enrich those VC investors. It experienced a major attack that nearly stole all the funds, and I was there and witnessed the following. So this was faulty code, and this is the biggest weakness with DAOs, is they could have some kind of code error or whatever. But what I witnessed was WhiteHack, Gavin Wood, WhiteHacker, he saved the day through freezing the funds using attack vectors similar to the attacker on the DAO. And that was an extremely high level, skill level proof for Gavin Wood because, he was time constrained, and to come up with solutions and to be able to attack an attacker with code in code that you didn't even write. Like the people the Slockit team, I think that's what they were, who made the DAO, to interpret all their code and to attack at the rate that he did, he proved his skill level. Like, he's a master Jedi of programming. I think Gavin Wood is the most skilled programmer in all of cryptocurrency. That's just my opinion, and I've seen it firsthand right here. So Gavin Wood is the major architect of ETH and Polkadot. So, he was one of the architects of Ethereum, and now he, has made Polkadot and Kusama. And so that's one of the reasons I've seen this guy's skill level, not only from history, but I've also seen I agree with his approach from, on these new approaches. And these have DAOs. These are DAOs. Polkadot and Kusama are a DAO. And the next thing was disputes followed on what to do. Everyone, there was disputes on what to do, and for everyone to understand the importance of governance. Oh, okay, so these disputes made everyone aware of how important governance was, because it was difficult to reach conclusions on what should be done. So dispute resolution became an important understanding within skilled programmers and etc. on understanding what to do. Having a framework for decisions is a critical part of any system. That was what was learned from this DAO hack. Not only did the developers learn, but the investors learned this concept as well. Observing all of this. And another thing, Charles Hoskinson, who was resentful for being kicked out of Ethereum. This guy was kicked out of the Ethereum group early on. He was very resentful for that. So out of his resentment, he attacked Ethereum with a copy of ETH that was a version of the protocol that gave the DAO attacker, the person who attacked and tried to rob people, gave the DAO attacker funds that were stolen, and took the idea that no governance should be allowed. There should be no governance. That's what he was proposing. Charles Hoskinson was proposing. No governance should be, these blockchains should be, code is law. So there is no governance. The code itself is governance. And there should be no democratic process or no dispute resolution process at all. That's what he was taking. So, and this was an attack vector against Ethereum out of resentment for being kicked out. And that's why I don't, personally, nowadays Charles seems to have changed a little bit. He's grown, he's gotten a little wiser, and he seems to not hate Ethereum as much as he used to. But back in the day, Charles hated Ethereum. And he had, you could see the hate for them. So, but now he has calmed down with that, and it seems moods have settled, and ideological approaches have settled. But why would Charles propose to have governance in the future on Cardano when in the past he was such a proponent of no governance, code is law? There's some ambiguity there. You could say that the code is the governance. So but these are just my perspective, and I try to see it as neutral as possible. I hope I'm not diluted. Okay, so now let's go continuing. In 2017, the ICO Boom took place from the ERC20 standard that was developed, and it was on Ethereum, and this standard was developed by Fabian. And many of the ICOs failed to deliver anything useful, and few had governance at all during that. A lot of these tokens were worthless, but it was because of this standard that they could even exist at all. And also many projects had parasitic funding. Parasitic funding is the sense that tokens raised funds for development in ETH, and then that ETH was sold on the market, suppressing the ecosystem, the very ecosystem which they desired to build on. So all these funds, so you had Ethereum, and people would send their ETH to fund all these projects, and then those projects would sell their tokens that they're getting, so pushing the price down, and were kind of parasitic to the very system that they were raising money from. So that, that was, a parasitic funding model that existed, and that exists on every system today. This still hasn't been fixed, except for Polkadot. Polkadot is the only one that I know of that has fixed the parasitic funding model. And Gavin Wood, has been part of the space, and he's learned the lessons, and he's designed this. This is my favorite system. That's personally why I'm biased towards it. And I don't know of any other project that has fixed this parasitic approach. So experimentation continued with many DAOs showing up. And right now we're in the DAO, the rise of the DAO. There's experimentation, we went from 2017 to ICOs, you know, the development years during the bear market. And now we're in DAOs, NFTs, DEXs, and they're all, you know, like some real utility going. And even the DAOs are starting, like almost every project has a DAO because everybody knows the dispute resolution, and this is stuff we've learned. So, you know, that's, you know, and Fabian, by the way, could you imagine being the person who kicked off the first entire like the entire market was this guy, and right now he is the Luxo architect. So that's a little hint right there. But yeah, so you know, like the point of this video, I hope I covered these things well. Was a basic purpose, why understanding DAOs is important, general view of what they are, DAOs compared to the old system, and then, you know, the history of them. And so, you know, that's what I covered in this video. So like in the next one, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth how DAOs work, and, you know, I'll go over even some of the technical stuff and their issues and some of the, you know, in depth, etc. So I hope this video is useful, and the reason I'm going to DAOs, extremely valuable topic. You know, I'll bring out that next video soon. So if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, give my Patreon a follow, look forward to next time.